Yeah.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the City Futures Open Workshop on options for Cameron Road Stage 2. Nick, are you giving an introduction?
I just had a chat to Chris about that. He's happy to just lead off. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, Morena, elected members, Tangata Whenua Representative Flintoff. So today we're here to talk about Cameron Road Stage 2. The key purpose of today's session is to provide an update on some design progress since the previous workshop, which was held in June, and also to provide an update on funding provisions, so particularly in regard to the IAF Crown Grant funding, which the new government funding agency, NIFCO, are now administering. So with that, we've got a brief agenda here. So the team we have around today, we've got some from the strategy and growth team, particularly close to the funding agreements with NIFCO. So Andy and Ben, we've got Nick, Sarah and Anthony, as well as myself and Richard, the senior PM. So as we go through, please feel free to ask any questions as we're going along, but otherwise we'll run through the presentation and hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end, so however you want to run that. So generally we'll run through quickly the background and context. I don't propose to dwell on that for long. A reminder of the direction that we received from the 12th of June workshop, where we presented the value for money options and received some good feedback through that session. Bit of a funding update, and then talk a little bit around where the design work and the emerging options and updated cost estimates, and then talk about the next big step for us, proposing to report to Council on the 26th of August, and so talk about what we're proposing to come through into that and get some feedback on whether that hits the mark for what you're expecting. A little bit of context and background. So quickly running through, as you know, Cameron Road is one of Tauranga's main arterial corridors, providing a key connection into the city centre for people within and beyond the corridor. So it's a really important route. It's a destination for many along the corridor. It's got connection to the city centre, schools, businesses, public spaces, residences, hospitals. And over the next 30 years, significant intensification is planned, particularly across the Te Papa Peninsula, and also the corridor provides a key connection into broader city growth, particularly through the Western Corridor. So the Cameron Road Stage 2 project is focused on providing a movement function and an upgrade to the current constraints along that corridor. Unless there's any questions on that, propose we move on. I think we understand the context behind the project and what we're looking to achieve. So at the previous committee workshop on the 12th of June, the project team presented 5 options. They ranged in, you'll recall there was previously a business case which identified an option which, particularly without the NZTA co-funding, didn't fit within our current funding, within the funding stack. Elected members asked us to go away and look at the options that could be delivered within a reduced funding envelope, and we presented some of those options to you. The committee outlined a preference for two full-length options that were presented for the full corridor from 17th Avenue to Barks Corner. So what we called them in that workshop was a value engineering plus cycle facility, and also a value engineering within existing curb lines. And the direction we got from elected members was those two seem to be about where seem to hit the mark, with potentially a hybrid of that to be developed. So what we've done is we've gone away, done some more work on a proposed hybrid option along the corridor, and also done some further cost assessment work as well, just to sit behind that. So I'll give you a bit of an update on where that design work's got to. Quick reminder of the funding stack that we're looking to work within, particularly around the transport elements, as was presented previously. So we're working towards a funding envelope of $96.6 million for the project, for the transport elements, noting that some of the waters components sit separately and in addition. But the transport element funding is primarily comprised of $56.6 million of IAF Crown grant funding, $20 million of allocated IFF levy funding, and proposed $20 million of DC funding. So that is the proposed funding stack we're looking to deliver the project within. Quick update on the IAF component. So NIF, who are the new government agency, new government funding and financing agency, have replaced Kāinga Ora as the administration agency of the current IAF funding agreement, and they're currently reviewing the portfolio of the overall IAF projects with a view of reconciling where a lot of those projects are at the moment, and outlined that across their portfolio they are looking at potentially changing some of those funding conditions or potentially withdrawing funding where councils or partners have not committed to delivery of those projects, or they're not progressing in the way that they would like those projects to proceed. So NIF have advised us they've got a milestone at the end of August coming up to report up to ministers in terms of where those projects are at, and that's where for us we want to make sure we're positioning this project in the best way to retain the IAF funding provision and keep access to that IAF funding grant. So NIF have outlined to us if they're not satisfied with how projects are progressing or that they're consistent with the current funding agreements, there is a potential for either full withdrawal of the IAF funding commitment or potentially some form of proportional investment as well. So either if there's reduced project outcomes or a reduced cost, do they proportionally reduce their commitment into the project? So just wanted to flag that one. Some of the scope changes that they may perceive as triggering a change to the existing funding agreement would be a significant change in either project scope, outcomes or cost from the original agreement. Oh, yep.
Thank you. So clarification. So when you've got a lot of acronyms on the slide,
Okay.
just keep us in the loop, please. But when might that decision for IAF funding happen? So is this 56 confirmed or not confirmed?
So Andy and Ben can jump in. We have an existing funding agreement which is in place with the Crown around. So there is an existing agreement. What they're doing is reviewing for the $56.6 million, and they're reviewing that with a view across the portfolio to undertake a comprehensive review through September and October, which we need to inform that reporting by the end of August. But Ben, did you have anything further, or Andy, to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add. There we go. So with the change in administration from Kāinga Ora to NIFCO, the National Infrastructure Funding and Financing Company. Yeah. So it used to be called Crown. Yeah, it used to be called Crown Infrastructure Partners, and now it's been subbed out with a new name and a bit of a broader mandate. They've picked up administering the IAF fund. So in 2023, the Crown granted about a total of like $906 million nationwide, and of that, about $30 million has been drawn down to date. So they're kind of looking at that and saying something here is not working. We were meant to be accelerating, sort of clues in the name, all of these infrastructure projects to deliver housing, and that just doesn't seem to be happening. That 30 million's been spent on like 2 or 3 projects, which includes Tauriko West. So the Minister for Infrastructure has said, go away and find out why this money's not being drawn down. Are there sort of practical hurdles that are stopping it happening, or are these projects fundamentally not happening themselves, and so we should kind of look at whether we continue to set aside cash for them. The Minister, NIFCO's told us they expect the Minister to make the decision in October or November, which means they need their report finished by September, which means they need to kind of have it written by the end of August, as their kind of timelines they're working on.
And so the number, I think we had an extra, how many houses that we were on that first slide, is that going to be taken into account, and is that actually a feasible number to be having within this project?
So the housing outcomes so the way the IAF structured is we have a funding agreement and then we have sort of housing outcomes agreements. Te Papa's a little bit unique in New Zealand in that there weren't many brownfield developments funded through IAF, they were primarily greenfield. And so the housing outcomes in our agreement, we commit to about 1,600 houses, dwellings in the Te Papa Peninsula. No, because significantly more dwellings are enabled through the Te Papa Peninsula than we've actually committed to in the funding agreement. And that funding agreement is meant to be, on a nationwide basis, supported by housing outcome agreements that add up to 1,600. But in this case, they don't. There's substantially less, just because of the kind of unique nature of brownfield development compared to greenfield, and infill just being a bit more sort of bitsy and fragmented rather than big, 200 houses going in here, etc.
Cool. So from our view, the proposed scope and outcomes of what we're looking to deliver with the value for money solution is still consistent with the original intent of the funding agreement and the original project business cases. So what we're looking to deliver, in our view, still delivers the intended outcomes and enables the housing deliverables. As Ben's noted, different to greenfield environments, the housing outcomes are premised on infill and intensification through the Te Papa Peninsula, which is, again, we're enabling through the delivery of this project, but it's a bit harder to measure and is reliant on the public sector obviously coming in and delivering that intensification. So, but that's also understood by NIFCO and the work the team's doing to describe the outcomes that this project is here to deliver. So key for us on this is, in order to best position the project from our view, to retain access to the IAF Crown Grant funding, we're recommending that in the 26th of August meeting that Council makes it very clear through resolution that there is a commitment to deliver this project and its intended housing outcomes in accordance with the existing agreement. So we think that that's going to best position, best enable through resolution something that we can hand over to NIFCO to say this council is committed to still delivering the project and its outcomes. Sorry.
So which housing numbers are going to use? The ones we've just seen today, or those ones?
So for the NIFCO agreement, the intention would be, for the IAF funding agreement, we would be talking about the 1,600. So the numbers that are on that are more around the Western Corridor. This is a general smart growth slide rather than targeted and specific to the intensification on the Te Papa Peninsula. So the Cameron Road Stage 2 project does support growth of the Western Corridor as a whole, as well as enabling intensification of the Te Papa Peninsula. The numbers for Te Papa intensification are included in the general citywide 22,000 to 24,000 intensification numbers there. But maybe Andy or Ben might be able to jump into help support the numbers component.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're in a good place around being able to tell the housing story for this project. We have completed, so I guess there's two components of it. One is what we've enabled to be delivered, and the second part is what is being delivered and will be delivered in the future. So through Plan Change 33 and the upzoning around medium density residential and along the corridor, the high density, 6 and 8 stories and higher around the CBD, that provides significant additional opportunity in future. So that was always a critical part of our IAF funding, the fact that we were going through that process. That's now well and truly completed. And then we've got a strong story to tell about consenting and delivery of housing in Te Papa. So I don't know if you've driven around there recently, but there's probably around 20 terraced housing projects that are either just completed, in progress, or where the site is being cleared for that to happen. So we can show a clear story that the housing is happening, and then there's a pipeline of that continuing in the future. So in terms of the housing story, it'll be focused around that. We'll go back and review whether 1,600 is the right number, but it's probably not going to be significantly dissimilar from that.
Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, just on the numbers, the 19,000 additional dwellings and the 29,000 additional residents that were used for the Cameron Road Stage 1, and then talked about in council meetings relating to Cameron Road Stage 2, is that officially long gone? Is that, like, are those numbers now, because if they are, I think it'd be good to put that on the record that those numbers are no longer valid.
Yeah, so there's different numbers based on what type of time period you're looking at and what sort of range you're looking at.
That was 30 years.
Yeah, so we'd have to just go back and revisit that. Those numbers probably have changed a bit. I don't think, yeah, so we could come back on that, but that's part of the latest smart growth strategy and projections. Will have updated numbers around that in it.
Yeah, I understand at the higher level, but I guess I'm honing in on what has been described as Te Papa going out to Barks Corner, and the 30-year time frame was 19,000 dwellings, 29,000 people. Commissioners talked about 40,000 more people in the 30-year period. I guess 1,600 just seems a lot smaller if we're talking the same time frame. So are we talking about just 1 decade, 1,600 homes, is it?
We'll come back and clarify that. Certainly over 30 years will be far more than 1,600 homes. I think recently we've been doing about 200 new house building consents per annum in Te Papa. So there's a flavour there, and we expect that to increase over time.
If I could just add a detail to that, the 1,600 is over about a decade in the funding agreement. Also, if we're thinking about the IAF agreement, it's sort of a trade-off of the government looking for houses in return for their cash grant. So the houses is what we offer. So we want, for this particular conversation around funding, we want that number to actually be as low as possible, not as high as possible.
Just can I ask that that's an action that the resolution for the 26th of August meeting does have a full breakdown of what we're talking about, because there's obviously, it's not clear which numbers are coming from where, and please include the numbers that were used in Cameron Road 1, just so we've got a table of what the numbers we've been using are and which we're using when you put this up, and then talk 1,600, just so we're all clear, please.
Yep, we can include that in the report to the 26th of August. A summary around that.
Excuse me, Chris. Nick wants to make a comment.
I just wanted to make a comment on that, just in relation to the communication now leading up to the meeting on the 26th. So that's, just want to emphasise the importance of ongoing communication between now and the 26th, because on the 26th we don't want to have any doubts around where we go with this, because like Chris said, at the end of the month, we need to signal where we are going with this in terms of housing provision and movement and transport, etc., and the outcomes we're looking for. So if you have any questions or need any clarifications, now is the time to put it on the table so that we can respond to that and make sure that you are comfortable with that by the time we get to the 26th. So I'm just emphasising why we're having this workshop and opening the conversation so that we get all of those issues closed out by the time we finalise the paper.
I'm happy to get that table of all the numbers of housing as soon as it's
Yeah,
available.
brilliant.
So
Yep,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, I have a major concern around the reality of this, that we have a 1-year period where we have to be working on the Turret Road section of the 15th Turret project and constructing this project. And in order to sort of, you know, have some integrity in what we say to the government and to take their money, and, you know, I don't want it to be that we are telling them one thing and secretly kind of going, yeah, but we know we won't be able to do it, but we'll at least we'll get the money and get started. Like, I'd rather have a solid plan up front that we can all put hand on heart and say we can do this. And I've seen nothing to give me any confidence that we could do that, because it just defies belief to me that with the projected, you know, travel demand on those other corridors, the arterial routes, study is going to uncover for us, you know, that we could do both those projects at the same time. And yet that's what this plan is kind of suggesting we have to do.
Well, I think that sort of goes to sequencing and timing of delivery. I think what the government are looking for is a commitment to deliver, and then I think, Chris, are you going to talk about the proposed sequencing? Because we're critically aware of the Turrets 15th and Cameron Road Stage 2 and how that will impact on the network, and that's a consideration in terms of sequencing, but I think it's about commitment to deliver, and then it's a conversation about when that delivery happens and how that impacts on the network. And so, have you got the answers, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a credible plan. And we'll get onto it. It's a part of the slide pack at the back end where we talk about next steps and delivery profiles. But overarching that, the intention is that 15th Ave to Welcome Bay, we're looking to sequence the construction of Cameron Road Stage 2 after the 15th Ave to Welcome Bay. There might be a slight overlap there in terms of some of the less impactful works on Cameron Road, but primarily we're well aware of the network constraints in terms of not delivering these in parallel or concurrently, but we are also confident that we can deliver the Cameron Road Stage 2 project in accordance with the timeframes attached to the IAF funding agreement by June 2030 as well. So there's a bit of a slide there in terms of how that's sequenced and prioritised, but we can have another chat on that as well. So any other questions on the funding before I kind of jump on to the scope and design development components that have been progressing? No? Cool. All right, so since the last workshop, following the previous workshop and some of the feedback and good feedback from elected members on corridor preferences, staff have developed a hybrid option along the corridor. So this, aside from the Greaton Village, which we'll come to subsequently, in our view this hybrid option represents a good balance for the corridor. This image is a representation from 17th Avenue next to the hospital, but is representative of the general proposed concept along the corridor. And a full set of drawings showing the concept along the whole corridor have been provided as an attachment as well, and I think available to you and Stella subsequent to the meeting. So this option builds on the value engineering options which were presented previously within the reduced funding envelope. And provides, in general, a four-lane corridor along the full length of Cameron Road, plus a full-length cycle route, primarily separated on-road cycle facilities, but through some areas where there's space constraints, the cycle facility on one side of the road will change to a shared path. Generally looking to remain within the existing curb-to-curb alignment along the corridor, though some sections there is widening required, particularly at some of the key pitch points and around intersections. And as previously discussed, through this proposal, there's an opportunity to retain an on-street parking provision outside of peak traffic flow periods if desired. However, does result in the removal along the majority of the corridor of the existing flush median, which is generally used for right turning into side streets and driveways. So that's the key compromise attached to this to get the throughput outcomes and the cycle lane provisions. So of this design, there's been a high-level transport safety review that's been completed with, obviously it's an early indicative concept. There's no showstoppers from a safety perspective, but obviously some issues to continue to work through, noting that we would anticipate to work through a standard design process and full safety audits, etc., through subsequent phases of delivery.
Sorry, so if there's no right turn, so what do you anticipate that cars just stop in the right turning lane because they want to go into their driveway, or there's no ability to do that, or how is that anticipated to happen?
So there are examples around other parts of the country, particularly, not so much in Tauranga, where we wouldn't be banning the right turn movements into whether it's side streets or driveways. So people would have the ability. We'd work through this in detail through the next phase, but the idea is people would be able to stop in the in the lane to be able to right turn, wait for a gap, and vehicles would go around them through. I think there was an example which the Mayor mentioned in the last workshop around Oniwa Road in Auckland, where similar situation and operation. Obviously, it's not ideal. The other component, obviously, for a lot of the side streets and driveways is there are alternative routes where you can take a right turn and then go around the block to be able to provide a left access. So we anticipate there'll be a combination around that, and that will self-moderate over time as well in terms of people finding the safest and most efficient way to access into and out of their properties and businesses, etc. This is just, I guess, a word summary of some of the scope and some of the key constraints and compromises attached to that hybrid design. Our recommendation is that we'd like to take this corridor concept option, which we think represents a good balance between meeting the project objectives of supporting corridor movement and enabling the housing development. We'd like to proceed to community engagement on this concept to seek some feedback from the community on their thoughts on this proposal and arrangement for the corridor as a whole, excluding the Greaton area, which we'll come on to next. So,
excuse me.
Sorry.
Oh, just a quick question on the discussion from that last photo and frame, obviously with the hospital being there and being a critical ingress-egress. Obviously you've factored that into that early stage, talking about ins and outs. Just a quick comment on the hospital significance as part of this. I know it's about movement, but that's also...
Yeah, Rich can jump in if need be, but generally what we've looked to do is retain particularly right turn provisions at key intersections. Obviously 17th Ave, access to the hospital, and also the right turn into the next street there, which is it 18th or is it 20th maybe? So certainly at those key junctions, and particularly areas like the hospital or other key side streets, look to make sure that the turning movement and provision for that is retained. So that's something, along the corridor, it's a bit horses for courses, depending on I guess the priority of that side street, but that's something we can look at through the next stages of design development as well. Like I say, this is an early concept. All right, so Greaton Village. We outlined in the last workshop that through Greaton Village, there's a few options through there, and at this stage, so focusing between Cornwall Street and Chadwick Road roundabouts, we think there's three general viable options. An initial assessment that all of these options are viable and supporting the intended corridor outcomes without compromising the operation of the corridor significantly. However, the options have different features and associated benefits and compromises attached to them. So there's some visual representations of what those are on the subsequent slides, but in general, option 1 involves 4 lanes with signalised intersections at the Cornwall and Chadwick intersections. So this supports Cameron Road traffic throughput and also control of those intersections through traffic signals, as well as obviously safer pedestrian crossing facilities at traffic lights, but compromises on a cycle lane provision through the village, and also transport modelling has demonstrated it's not the most efficient option in terms of traffic throughput, and is also the highest cost option. Option 2, which is effectively retaining within the existing curb alignment, so 2 lanes through the Greaton Village area. This option prioritises more of a sense of place for Greaton Village. Also supports corridor cycling with a dedicated facility, and is the lowest cost option, but is not as efficient for Cameron Road traffic throughput and doesn't provide great pedestrian crossing facilities either. So, and again, option 3, which is 4 lanes with roundabouts at the Chadwick and Cornwall intersections. So modelling demonstrates it's the most efficient for Cameron Road traffic throughput, but again, it compromises on a cycle lane, doesn't provide great corridor crossing facilities, even with the addition of a proposed mid-block pedestrian crossing. So again, there's various trade-offs attached to all of these options that we think we need to work through a bit further, but just wanted to highlight what those are. So visually, this is the 4 lanes with signals at the existing intersection. So, sorry for the still pretty indicative concept designs, but the red lines that you can see underneath are the existing curb lines and the existing roundabouts. So you can see, through there, you can fit effectively 4 lanes of through traffic and put in some signalised controls at the 2 intersections. Option 2, which is effectively retaining within the existing curb alignment, you get the dedicated separated cycleway through the area. Like we say, it's similar to the existing arrangement with a few enhancements, so probably consistent with a lot of the rest of the corridor in terms of remaining curb to curb. But obviously you don't get the 4 lanes of through traffic through there, through that short length, which isn't necessarily insurmountable in terms of traffic network impacts for that short distance. And then there's a 4 lane with roundabouts option, just to visually show, what those different options look like. So all options are viable, and from our perspective, no options materially compromise on the intended housing outcomes we're looking to deliver within the funding agreement. But our recommendation is at this stage, we're not recommending a preferred option through the village, and through the next stage of proposed community engagement, we'd like to seek feedback on these 3 options to inform a preferred option. So that's the crux of where the design's currently at.
Just quickly on those 3 options, have you done any modelling around alternative routes, Cornwall Road onto Greaton Road? Because at the moment, that's where a lot of the traffic build-up happens quite quickly. At peak hour traffic, you get stuck you just cannot get out of Greaton Road onto Chadwick Road because of the volume of traffic that's choosing to avoid going through the village.
Yeah, we have, and there'll be more traffic modelling required to go and support some of this next stage of work as well. Obviously, we're doing some concept development options developing indicatively in concept. We haven't gone through a detailed modelling exercise based on these revised concepts, but through the previous iterations of the business case development, we have done detailed traffic modelling for the network, including various options through the area. It just hasn't necessarily specifically modelled these specific scenarios. So we've got indicative indications around that, which we can pull through. But yeah, there is some more work required through the next stage of design development to inform the traffic network implications specific to these arrangements.
It's just, at a first glance, the traffic lights at each end, to me, to give the pedestrians options to go when Chadwick Road, when Cameron Road's actually on a red light, they can cross at both ends, and it wouldn't impact traffic, because at the moment that pedestrian crossing just off the roundabout is pretty much the centre of a lot of the traffic issues on that, at that roundabout. The volume of kids that just push it just for the hell of it. So I understand that around the costs involved in putting lights at both ends, but from a ease of traffic flow versus pedestrians be able to cross the road, we need to do some sort of modelling around, does that improve traffic flow on Greaton Road, Cornwall Road, and general traffic flow through Chadwick Road Village, as well as what happens at the Cameron Road portion of the village?
Yeah, we can take that one away. We have done, like I say, some preliminary modelling. It wasn't, slightly counterintuitively, it wasn't that supportive of the traffic light, the traffic signal operation in terms of the overall network implications and delay scenarios. But we'll take that one away to do some more work around that one.
Greaton is a real sense of place theory, and I think all over the world, examples where you do this sort of thing through the middle of a place is hazardous. And I'm thinking the other thing is, with the intensification of the peninsula, there's going to be more traffic. So it's really bad now. So it will be a short time until it's really, really bad in there. So is there, like, I do agree, I think it needs to be bypassed in the long term.
Yeah, Greaton Village, you can definitely look at it almost two ways. One, it's a place, and the other one, it's serving its Cameron Road movement function. And I think you can definitely have them both. Like, 2 lanes of traffic through there, you provide bus priority or transit priority up until the village. For the 400 metres of Greaton Village, that traffic is slowed down. It's a place, like, there's retail both sides of the street. People should be able to cross freely. The toll road was built as the bypass. If you are doing north to south movements, and when the connection to 15th Ave is made, that will make those bypassing Greaton more attractive. That toll road's not going to be a toll road forever, unless legislation is changed to keep it a toll road, of course, so that's out of our hands, but it is scheduled to not be a toll road in the near future. So focusing on Greaton as, like, only focusing on movement would be to the detriment of the village, in my opinion. You'd turn it into Bethlehem Village, sort of, and that's a state highway, but that's 4 lanes of traffic focused on movement. It's not a nice place to cross the street, sit outside, have a coffee, etc. So, it's a real transport sort of planning conundrum of movement in place, but I think in these sort of instances, you can have both. Yeah.
3 quick things. One is, when you bring back the sort of main report or before then, I'd be interested in that, I can't remember what year it was, but the initial work that was done on the Chadwick Road intersection. So there's some work done, then it went to the council, you two over there will remember it, and then it came back again. So I'm not talking about the second time it came back with the current design, but the initial piece of work which looked at the modelling impacts at that time, which is probably heading towards a decade ago, on the side streets, and there's quite a bit of analysis done, I believe. Second thing is, when you come back to us, it'd be interesting, rather than just 2 roundabouts or 2 lights, to look at what a lot of people have called for there, which is lights at Chadwick and roundabout at Cornwall, or existing, whatever you want to describe it as, just to see if that is a valid option. And then the third thing is, does the council own the lane from the Gretton Hall through to Chadwick Road? And if we're not sure, could we look at that? It's what a few people have come back to me already and suggested that as the cycling corridor. I know it'll send shudders up the spines of some transport planners, but it is what people do now. So I've had a few people tell me that that's their destination line when they go out there, their route of choice. They stay away from all the cars and buses and everything on the main road. They stay away from the footpath where there's quite a few people walking, and they just go, this is a very lightly used lane down the back. And if we owned it, you know, that could be a bit of a left field option, at least for one way, even though the people who use it tell me they use it in the opposite direction, coming back from the city to their homes in Pies Pa, etc. But, you know, to me, just looking at what we own there, we're, you know, perhaps to Arthur's point too, that, you know, the more we can sort of separate out those modes at that point, probably the safer it is.
Yeah, we can. Good point. So we'll go away and have a look at that, the previous component. In terms of ownership of the lane, we're not sure on that one. Just I don't think we own that. Just even looking at the drawing there and some of the property boundaries that look like sit attached to that kind of service lane behind. I think they're part of the private business, but we'll have a look at that one as well.
Thank you. I was just sort of hoping with the hall there, maybe it was, but yeah, that's right.
Just pause for a second. The Chief Executive would like a small opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in terms of Cameron Road Stage 1 and what was a shovel-ready project where we were successful in securing $40 million for a project that we thought would cost $40 million. And ultimately, because of a number of things, including $20 or $30 million worth of water investment, and then a lot of unforeseen underground issues that we struck around the development of that project. How confident are we that the numbers that we've seen here today in terms of the funding stack will deliver the project? And as part of the project, whilst it's a housing enabling project, it's also an opportunity for us to secure and create a corridor for the next 2 or 3 decades. What else is involved with this project that we don't see here today, including water investment? So there's a few questions there. I just think it's the focus today has been pretty much on the transport part of this project, but can you provide some wider context, please?
It's a really good question, and I'll just jump forward quickly on the slides in terms of the cost assessments that have been done to address that one. So updated bottom-up cost estimates have been done against all of these options. Like we do have confidence that they are deliverable within the funding stack. There's a lot of lessons learned out of Cameron Road Stage 1, how that was both the front end rush and making sure appropriate contingencies and risks have been accounted for, as well as some of those surprises that came along the way. So updated estimates have been done. For those familiar with the cost estimation procedures manual, and we follow generally the NZTA cost estimation procedures manual. The expected forecast outturn cost column is equivalent to what's a P50 expected estimate value. And that includes an assessed contingency. So we do have a reasonably high level of confidence in the estimates and that the project can be delivered within the revised funding stack. These estimates do include quite a healthy contingency, but that's also acknowledging that the concept designs are a relatively early stage. So if you looked at the funding stack, the base cost is relatively low, and there is a very healthy contingency to account for the unknowns attached to that early stage of design development attached to this as well. So, yeah, so and the team that has pulled this together, we've done quite a lot of rigour and scrutiny and tested and challenged around some of their assumptions and risk components as well that have been accounted for within those contingency values.
Or just, does this include the water component?
No, so separately on the bottom, there is...
Sorry, small print.
Sorry, small print, little notes. So on that, there's separately $86.7 million in terms of inflated values budgeted for Three Waters upgrades, which is largely to go and deliver a strategic water main upgrade along the corridor from Chadwick Road back to 17th Ave and in that vicinity. So that's the bulk of the main waters upgrade components. The other key component through the value engineering and optimisation exercise, and we highlighted this in the previous workshop, is a key component of what we're trying to deliver here is remain in the existing curb-to-curb alignment, which reduces a lot of the unknowns. So what we're looking to do is we're not looking to do full pavement rehabs. We're not looking to go and widen curbs, which exposes us to a lot of the utility risks, service risk, needing to go and replace stormwater mains and water mains and everything else. But the design optimisation that we've done, as much as it's a cost reduction exercise, it's also a risk reduction exercise to try and reduce the risk profile of what we're looking to encounter by staying curb to curb.
Thank you. And just one more. So what disciplines, structures and processes do we have in place now that we didn't for Cameron Road Stage 1? It's a bit of a patsy question. But...
Yeah, well, there's a whole raft of things. So we do have... Yeah, so obviously we've got a dedicated major projects delivery team, which is a first component in terms of having hopefully the right capability and capacity to go and a dedicated delivery team to go and do this, who have done these similar types of projects in the past, which helps support understanding of the risk profiles and knowing what we're getting ourselves into and been there, done that a little bit before. We've also got streamlined independent governance or independent governance oversight and assurance through our OSG process, which again keeps us on our toes, tests and challenges, looks at things like cost estimates, risk profiles, contingency values, and gives us a sanity check and an assurance lens across numbers and processes we're putting forward. As well as we've documented a lot around lessons learnt from previous projects and things like Cameron Road Stage 1. I think one of the key components there was a lot of time pressure attached to that at the front end, and that was due to the funding agreements attached to that at the time to secure the funding and get that project moving. What we're looking at adopting systemised across our portfolio is more of a plan slow, think slow, and then get into the delivery phase with a lot more confidence. So we're not rushing into the start line of this. We really want to make sure that we've fleshed out those risks, really understand it before we commit to the construction phase and the physical works. And there are further checks and gateways along the way through the project development life cycle before we pull the trigger on actually committing to that construction cost as well.
Thank you. Councillor Schuler.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. I'll get the ignorant question out of the way first. There was no consideration or no thought of or tidal sort of flow wouldn't work through there? You can laugh at me. That's the first question.
No, it's a good question. It was considered. Tidal flow generally requires lane and the dynamic lane type arrangement. Yeah. Through this corridor where there's existing, we've identified effectively that we can fit a 4-lane corridor through there from a traffic flow perspective, which we feel is a better arrangement in terms of having having that provision rather than necessarily a three-lane corridor where stuff's moving all the time. So we can effectively get the same outcome potentially at a reduced cost and less operationally complex.
Now, next part of the discussion I want to have is around, so the new concepts, and effectively we're saving a huge amount of budget, but we're staying curb to curb. So in a big picture, how much are we reducing now the budget from the original plan to where we are now? Just loose, I mean, is it halving the scale?
Yeah, roughly. So the previous transport scope was around $168 million was the estimate, and now we're looking to deliver this within a $96 million funding envelope.
Not cornering you, but so already to deliver this way, we're making significant trade-offs potentially in terms of the strategic goals and visions for the city. So the flow and the housing potentially, there's impacts to flow, right? Or is this compared to the original project, or is that assumption wrong?
So what we've looked to do is optimise value for money, is look to change the scope but not change the outcomes. So in terms of the transport throughput and the strategic outcomes we were looking to deliver, we're still confident that we're delivering against that with this revised option.
So
what it's probably not delivering necessarily is
cycling amenity.
Even the cycling amenities still included there, but it is probably more the amenity. It's not going to have the pretty pavers and the revised berms and so it's not going to it's not going to look like a brand new corridor like the original concept design was, and you're not getting a whole brand new pavement and
Well, that's cool.
renewed asset life.
So that comes to my real question about the consult. Took a long time to get here. For what's at stake and for what we're doing and for what we need to deliver, and if housing and if the traffic flow are critical, I would prefer that we did go out with a preferred option and back that up with the rationale why we think this is best for the city long term, and then give the trade-offs to people in the consultation. So, hey, give all feasible options. So don't give an option that's good and then this one's rubbish. Say they're all feasible. This is our preferred because of this is the best for the city next 15, 20 years. If we end up doing this, that's still okay, but here are the trade-offs for the community. Because you may still have people that are saying, I just want it to be a village, I don't want any cars going through, and you might get 50 submissions on that. But in reality, I think we need to steer the community to, or is it just, hey, this is a carte blanche, what you think, we're starting from zero. So it doesn't feel like we're starting from zero.
Yeah, we're open to that approach. If I guess from a staff perspective, identifying what that preferred is probably what we'll need to engage with yourselves on further, because there are trade-offs on any of those options from our perspective. Anthony might.
And you're right, we're not starting at zero. The Te Papa Spatial Plan engaged not just with Greaton, but the wider Te Papa Peninsula extensively. 2020, 21, Cameron Road Stage 2. This project has been out to the community at least once. Numerous workshops with Greaton, open days, etc. So, the project in a way has disappeared from the public light for a little while. So, re-engaging would be obviously critical. But how we do that is sort of up for grabs. But
being conscious of time here, Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Morris.
Just a couple of quick ones. First of all, working within the existing corridor, does it give us any, have we made any trade-offs that we might regret in 20 years' time by doing that?
We've had a look at the residual asset life of things like waters assets, transport assets. There's components that, as part of the original scope, were proposed for full renewal that aren't being delivered, but there's nothing there that's at an urgent end of life. Sorry, I'm
probably meaning if you're restricting yourself to where they currently sit, would there be benefit if you did the wider version? is there anything we've traded off because of that?
The main component is probably around the transport operation. There's nothing else that really jumps out as a significant compromise or trade-off. Rich, unless there's something I'm missing?
No, the key elements from the water's infrastructure, the water main runs through the road corridor, the wastewater runs in the berm, so they wouldn't affect our scope of works, even though they'd be delivered together. So both of those full upgrades are still available and will still be carried out as part of the overall major project, even though they're from two separate funding stacks.
Sorry, my second question. I see the drawings you got stop at Malimi Street. I presume after that, the main highway takes over that portion to the intersection?
Yeah, correct. So that was, as discussed through the last workshop, what we've looked to do is make sure the project is aligned with what's proposed through the State Highway 29, 29A RONS project. So that project is proposed to effectively upgrade the corridor through the Barks Corner interchange back to Malimi Street. So we'd be looking to deliver up to that point to tie in with their proposed extended works.
Just don't want to end up with another domain road, a ghost road there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, appreciate it, Councillor Taylor. You mentioned that the underground infrastructure is not at risk of imminent failure. So could you just
Could you operate closer to your microphone, please, Councillor?
Sure. I know you like to hear me. So you mentioned that there's no imminent failure of the underground network at present. So can you just give a little bit more of a background as to why we'd spend the 80 million to upgrade all of those services? Now, appreciate, as the surgeon said, I might as well do this while I've got you open. So I understand that argument, but it's certainly a significant cost. There's a big growth element to it as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah, so there's the key driver is around a growth element. So the water main upgrade is part of the Central Corridor Trunk Main program. So it's around more enabling growth is the key waters investment component, as well as there will be targeted end-of-life renewals, etc., along the corridor as well. But the majority of it is a growth driver rather than an asset end-of-life driver.
Rightio. That's our time is up. I just got to give a couple of steers around the sequencing of it. So when it comes to us at the council, better understanding of the roading versus the water. Are you going to do it at the same time, or are you going to do the water first, then the road? And a rough timeline of how your progression down Cameron Road. Are you going to do it in small sections, keep it nice and timely, and also a little bit on how we're going to accommodate the parking between the hospital and Gate Park, because you're passing the hospital and two schools, obviously going to have an impact on kids coming and going from the school. So a bit of a, how are we going to work around where all these people park during the day while we're redoing the road and the water, because that's where the biggest complaints will come from during the consultation, I'd imagine. And also there's current construction going on in Greta now with construction along Cameron Road. Will they be finished, those housing developments, before we get there, or do we need to get there for them to finish the housing development? Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you
now
very
you
much.
can respond to all of that in the paper if you wouldn't mind. Yes.
Yep, we'll take those away. Thank you very much for your time. And if, like we say, if you've got any questions in advance, feel free to reach out. Happy to continue to engage and advance the paper on the 26th. Thanks.
Thank you.